All right, kicking off the running back rankings at the very top is actually the same top three that were there before the season even started. Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. At this point in the season, all three of these guys are top 7 running backs in fantasy at RBs 4, 5, and 7. And listen, all these guys are in the same tier, so whatever your order is completely fine by me. Jahmyr Gibbs has been Mr. Steady Eddie all year, but Bijan and Breece Hall have had more 20-point games because, for the most part, they're not equally sharing their running backs with other top 15 running backs in the NFL, but all three of these guys are great, and I would be happy to have any of them on my fantasy rosters. Now, Tier 2 is another 3-man group of basically the other young stars. Kyren Williams, Devon Achane, and Kenneth Walker. All three of these guys are top 12 backs in fantasy football right now, with a small little asterisk. Walker and Kyren are the RB 6 and 11 right now, and Achane, while an RB 2 on the year, is the RB 1 in points per game in games he's played with Tua, which I think is a fair sample of games because of how different the Dolphins offense is with and without Tua, or should I say more likely with and without semi-competent quarterback play. And that's really the key here. Even with the risk of Tua medically retiring with another concussion, I believe Miami isn't going to let that be an issue moving forward. So they'll have a better backup plan, and until it's needed, we have a healthy Tua, allowing Achane to produce like an absolute game changer at the position every single week, which is why I have him here inside the top 5. Now, Kyren and Kenneth Walker are both great too. Their situations feel very secure for the next couple of years, which is all we really should be looking at for running backs anyway. So with their bell cow volumes and good offenses at or around 24 years old, this is the easy Tier 2 for Dynasty running backs. Now, Tier 3, another set of 3 players goes Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and James Cook. JT and Cook, I think, obviously deserve to be here as top 10 fantasy running backs, both at age 25, so it's easy to put them inside the top 10 because they're producing inside the top 10. But I don't think they should be higher than this because they're already older than everybody else that we've talked about, and for the most part, are not as productive, or in JT's case, as healthy as most of the other 6. And then, of course, Saquon has to be here just because of how insane he's been for fantasy this year. 22 points per game as the RB3 overall, and he's really just been dragged down by one bad game. He's actually averaging over 24 points per game in his other 7 games played. The only reason that he's not higher, and the only reason I strongly disagree with his October ADP of RB3 and keep trade cut rank of RB4, is because of age. He's an older 27 years old right now, turning 28 in February, and it's just impossible to rank a soon-to-be 28-year-old running back as a top 5 guy, let alone top 3 for Dynasty. Prime example of this, Christian McCaffrey right now. He was a consensus top 5 guy before the season started, if not even top 3 for some people, but one long-term injury knocks him out of the top 10, and God forbid anything worse happen when he returns, and he would plummet in value just like Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler did last year. That same reality is there for Saquon Barkley. I pray to God that nothing happens because I'm enjoying every minute of what he's doing this year, but that's just the truth with older running backs and why Saquon can't be in my top 5. But speaking of Christian McCaffrey, we get to Tier 4, which is only 2 guys because I didn't really know where else to put them. So we get Jonathan Brooks and Christian McCaffrey, 2 players at basically opposite ends of the spectrum for age, career trajectories, almost everything. Yet here they are in the same tier because they are in the same boat right now in one thing. They both need to get healthy. There really isn't much more to talk about here. We know who Christian McCaffrey is and can be when he's healthy. He just needs to get healthy. And Jonathan Brooks is the rookie with 2nd-round draft capital who I believe is better than Chuba Hubbard, and look what Hubbard is doing in this putrid offense. So imagine what Brooks can do in that role, and if the offense does improve over the next year or 2. He just needs to get healthy. Tier 4 is now the biggest tier we've talked about so far. It is 6 players in total, all of whom I label as the very productive old guys. Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, Brian Robinson, Alvin Kamara, and Josh Jacobs. All of these guys are 25 years or older, some of them much older than 25, and this is really where Dynasty starts to meet redraft, because with running back specifically, we really shouldn't be looking at guys for more than 1 to 2 years in the future. Some of these guys have what I consider to be more predictable longevity still, like David Montgomery, B-Rob, Jacobs, probably Mixon too, but really it's all about production here. If you're competing, then you want these guys on your roster. If not, you probably shouldn't have them on your roster, and that's just kind of that with this tier. Now, tier 6 is kind of the opposite of tier 5 in that it's mostly young or young-ish guys. Some of them have had production but currently are struggling or injured, and others have hopeful upside for the future but just need something to go their way to really hit that upside. So in tier 6, we have Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, Bucky Irving, and J.K. Dobbins. Everyone in here has potential to either climb back up the rankings when healthy or productive, or continue climbing if they build off their very strong starts to the season. Isaiah Pacheco is a very easy summary. He's just hurt right now. He's the one guy on here that I'm going to be very quick to return into the top 12 if he comes back and takes back the RB1 role from Kareem Hunt and finishes the year strong. Personally, I think Isaiah Pacheco is kind of done for the year for fantasy football. He can certainly return and play games, but I don't think he's going to be that effective coming off the injury, and could also be in a gross committee with Kareem Hunt that neither of them are really all that good for fantasy. Etienne is also kind of similar. He's also hurt right now or coming back from injury, but even prior to the injury was not all that productive. I am hopeful that he can reclaim the RB1 role over Tank Bigsby for the rest of the year and into 2025, but maybe also a trade to a new team and a new opportunity might not be a bad thing. Now, Bucky Irving has had a strong start and basically inserted himself as the best running back on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the committee approach there is also kind of annoying. I don't think that Bucky is ever going to become a bell cow running back, maybe in a couple years a la Tony Pollard without Ezekiel Elliott, but I think Bucky is just kind of who he is at this point, which is a very good RB2, maybe better as your RB3, but he's still young enough and certainly talented enough to have the chance to climb out of that certain archetype. And then Dobbins is the weirdest one in this tier for me because I don't know really what to believe on him. His resurgence has been a marvel to watch all year, and the opportunity that he has in LA is absolutely amazing. He's also still only 25 years old, almost 26, which is the same age as DeAndre Swift and Travis Etienne, and younger than Najee Harris. But can he stay healthy? That's really the key here. His injury history is lengthy, as we all know, so can he stay healthy and continue being the RB1 in LA for 1, 2, or even 3 more years in the future? If you told me he was their RB1 through 2026, he would be a lot higher in this rankings, but you can't tell me that, so this is where he is. All right, tier 7 is the second bigger tier, where tier 5 was the very productive old guys. Tier 7 is just productive old guys. Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, and James Conner. As of right now, none of these guys are fantasy RB1s in points per game, so mid to low end fantasy RB2s, and when paired with their ages and situations, this is where they fall in Dynasty. Sure, they can all have RB1 spike weeks, but also their floors are a lot lower than the more elite old guys above, mainly because their roles are not as integral to their offenses as the elite old guys. Everyone in this tier is absolutely a contender-only asset. They're the definition of cheap Dynasty production, and that is tier 7. And then finally, to round out the top 30 with tier 8 is just Tyrone Tracy, Tank Bigsby, and Trey Benson. The formula here is very, very simple. These guys are young. Well, technically, Tracy isn't young. He turns 25 in a couple weeks, but young in their careers, I should say. And they all have upside of getting workhorse volume rather quickly with just one change on their teams. Technically, Tracy already has that role, but does he keep it in 2025 as a day 3 pick? I would bet that he does, but it's not super set in stone, so who really knows on that? Bigsby could have a workhorse role in 2025 too if Travis Etienne is gone, but again, who really knows what that situation is going to be? And then Benson could get the keys to the Arizona Cardinals backfield if they let James Conner walk in free agency, but again, who knows? I will say that I do think these guys' values are very fluid though. So depending on your team's direction or roster construction, it probably makes more sense to roster a guy like Tank Bigsby or Trey Benson than an Aaron Jones or a Tony Pollard or vice versa. In a vacuum, Pollard and Jones are ranked higher, but Dynasty isn't in a vacuum. There's context to everything, and what fits for you might not fit for someone else. That's why these guys are in tiers, and it's not just a cookie cutter list of names. So there we have it, an updated top 32 Dynasty running back rankings now that we're a little over halfway through the 2024 season. Drop any and all questions in the comments down below. Feel free to call me an idiot again if you want, but make sure that you're subscribed either way for more Dynasty content for the rest of 2024 and into 2025.